Here we go. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Quinn, and I am the marketing manager with NAFA. Welcome to today's 100 Best Fleets Kickoff webinar. Before I turn things over to our speakers for today's session, there are a few housekeeping notes to review. This session is being recorded, and a copy of that recording will be available to you soon after the session is done. We encourage you to participate and ask questions in the chat using the Q&A feature on the Zoom toolbar below. If you experience any technical difficulties, please reach out to me via chat or by emailing the events@nafa.org team. And now, to kick things off, it is my pleasure to introduce 100 Best Lead Judge Michael Brennan.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 2025 100 Best Fleets Contest Kickoff webinar. We've really been looking forward to this day as far as the judging team and NAFA and the 100 Best Fleets project team. It's been a lot of work in the making. We've been working on the 2025 contest now basically since I&E last year. So we've got a lot of things to cover. There are some changes. We'll go over all that stuff. And I would like to again welcome you to the webinar. Just reminding everyone what we're doing here, the 100 Best Fleets contest was designed by Tom Johnson over 25 years ago. And he put this together so that fleets had a way to set goals, to benchmark their operations, and then get the recognition they deserve out of that. We're continuing that process, and we're continuing this program through the NAFA portfolio of educational events. And we do regional events and things all around the country throughout the year to share information that comes out of these contests. As a matter of fact, just yesterday, Scott and I, who's on the webinar with me today, we were in Babson Park, Massachusetts for the final 100 Best Fleets Regional of the Year. We had an outstanding event, some great speakers, great conversation, and great networking. So I do want to let everybody know that it's not just during the contest period and at I&E when there's involvement and there's things going on. Watch for the regional events in your region, and when they come into your region, go to them and show up. Those are a great way to learn and advance your fleet and meet new people and get new ideas as well. So we'll cover some of that again today. We couldn't do this contest without outstanding judges, totally committed to the process. They put in hundreds of hours every year judging these contests. This is the 5th year for Steve, Scott, and I, and we brought Danny in. This is his 2nd year. We have a lot of work to do. The contest is building momentum since COVID, and we now have the commercial contest and the Technician of the Year and the Fleet Professional of the Year, and we have a later announcement about something else we're doing now. But it takes a lot to do that. So I really want to thank the judges for their time and effort that they put into this. It is a year-round event for us. We couldn't do the program without our partner in this 100 Best Fleets, Sourcewell. They're an outstanding partner with us. They support everything we do in the 100 Best Fleets program, and they have a little video here that they would like to show.
The RFP process and the contract process can be not only time-consuming, but also grueling in terms of writing an entire spec.
My taxpayers would like to pay as little as possible, at the same time get as good a quality as we can.
My opinion with going through the bid process is you're not always comparing apples to apples. With the contracted purchasing, all that's already laid out.
It's much easier to use a cooperative contract because of the fact that it's already been pre-solicited and awarded.
It would be very difficult for my agency to do a public procurement on office supplies. But by using a public contract that was done through a cooperative, we don't have to do that work. The work has been done for us.
You have to go through a 6-month solicitation process to get what you need today. Kind of in a pickle.
The contracts are already vetted through the program you're using, so you know that you're getting the best price.
There are hundreds of contracts for all kinds of services.
Anytime that you can get something of high quality and that you also know you're going to get it for a very reasonable price, that it meets all of our rules that we have to follow as public officials.
it really makes the purchasing process a lot easier.
And again, we would like to thank Sourcewell for their partnership in this program. I want to remind everybody our awards announcement this year will be at the 2025 NAFA Institute and Expo. It's in Long Beach, California, April 28th through the 30th. The early bird rates are still available. I highly recommend you get registered, get your travel plans. It's going to be some great events. We've got a great schedule for the 100 best fleets there, so we look forward to seeing you there. I want to share a couple things about some regional performance, the geographical stuff that we've pulled out recently from the applications, just to show people where everything is coming from. Because all the information we put out comes right directly out of the applications themselves of the 100 best fleets. The 2024 geographical distribution map, you can see we're all across the country. So the data that we put out, the numbers, the metrics, the information comes from all across the country. So really, it's a great place to get information on what others are doing, similar in different regions, so you get that information. Here's something new that we've put together very recently is we've taken a look at the 100 best fleets by NAFA region. We have the 8 region now within NAFA, and we thought we'd take a look and see which regions are heavily populated with the 100 best fleets. And here's where it is. In the pie chart, we have the percentage of the 100 best fleets. The Southeast leads with 31%. There's some great networking and local organizations down in those areas. Same with the Southwest. South Central has a large contingency. And then in the box over there on the left, you can see the actual numbers of the 100 best fleets in those particular regions. Our regional events are designed for those who can't make it to INE. We try to get out to those regions 4 or 5 a year and bring the information out there to those people in those regions. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out this year after this contest, and we'll do a little comparison for you next year. When we look at a breakdown, the public fleets, city fleets are the largest percentage of the 100 best fleets. When it comes to the public contest, county fleets are second. Then we move into utility. The utility fleets in 2024 really expanded. We're really getting the attention of utility fleets in both the public and the commercial sector. Those fleets are really seeing the value of measuring their performance year after year and then getting the recognition they need. So this is the breakdown of that. You can see we have all kinds of different organizations, states, townships, law enforcement, airport authorities, fire, education, utility. So we have a very well-rounded set of public fleets that compete in this contest. When we move to the commercial fleets, we took a look at who is using the program to better themselves, and 31% are service and support providers. These are people that, service industries out there working to keep the fleets moving and doing those things, some rental fleets, things of that nature, some service providers that actually maintain fleets have gotten into this program, and they see the benefit of it. Linen and textile industry is very large as well. These are the people that support the hospitals and the restaurants with their linens and sheets and all that type of stuff. Trucking, 19% of our commercial fleets are in the trucking business, 13% in construction. Here again, we have 6% of them are utilities, and we have a fairly good number of insurance companies participating as well. So here again, similar to the public fleets, you can see we've got a very wide range of people in the contest. The commercial contest is growing. We expect it to grow again this year, and we're really looking forward to having more information for you next year on the commercial fleets. I do want to move now. We're going to start moving into what we're here for today. we're going to go through the application guides for the public fleets and the commercial fleets. We're going to talk a little bit about the Technician of the Year nomination process. We're going to talk a little bit about the Fleet Professional of the Year process, things that you can do, to get your people nominated, and tips and hints and things and how you should be responding to the criteria, what you should be putting in the essays, and those types of things. So let's get moving right along in with this. We've updated the contest application guides for both the public and the commercial contests. I can't emphasize how important it is that you read these guides. There's a guide specific to the public fleet. There's a guide specific to the commercial fleet. You're going to see exactly what those covers look like later on, but they're going to give you all the information you're going to need to be able to submit your applications. So make sure when you go online and download your application, you pull down the correct application guide as well. They are different. There are different criteria in both. This, I think, is one of the most important slides you're going to see today, and I recommend everybody print this slide out. It will be available on the NAFA website. It's a checklist, and this is what you need to do. And when you have all these boxes checked in, you should be pretty well ready to submit your application. This is what we're looking for. It's a great way just to start. You can share this with your team so that everybody knows what you're doing and how it needs to be done. So basically, we put a checklist together for you. I highly recommend you have that on your desk. When we start with these processes, we have 3 sections in the application. And the most important thing here is we get the agency name and the physical address of the fleet agency. If you give us a PO box for your governmental agency or the executive branch or wherever it goes to, and we have to send you your certificate because you can't make it to I&E, sometimes they get lost and they don't get them. So make sure we get that information. And then there's some other things in the opening segment. You can see additional information. If you would like us, or if we can share your information, we really don't share anyone's personal or any agency's specific information. All our information that comes out is in a general combined nature. We will never share any specific agency's direct data without their permission. This year, we're going to ask for resource library submissions. So if you have templates and spreadsheets or something that works very well for you and you'd like to share them with others, you can check that box too, and we'll get back to you and see what you have. If you have a team photo, send that along. We'd like to see that. Also, send in a shot of the fleet manager, fleet director, whoever's in charge of that as well. We like to have that too as well. We're going to ask you if you're going to be attending NAFA I&E. It's in Long Beach, California this year, and if you'd like to participate in the webinars and regional events. So when you go through that, make sure you check those boxes, and if you're good to go with that, and we'll have all that information. Moving on to the 2025 contest, we have some changes. Let's start with the general contest updates. We have updated the guides. Both of them are updated. They're ready to go for this year. All the changes are documented in the specific criteria. So here again, I can't emphasize enough how important it is to read that guide. The second thing we've done this year, and we've been kind of doing this year after year, and we're coming to a point we can't really go much further, but we have again increased the character limit in the specific criteria. We've moved it up to 450 characters this year from 400. We've taken a look again at the responses over the past few years, and we say if you can't finish it in the criteria, just tell us see essay and finish it up in the essay. And with 450 characters, if you're actually being fairly concise, you really shouldn't need to go to the narrative and your essay. Save the essay for your initiatives. If you have to finish in the essay, tell us to see essay. We really are trying to limit that, and we really like to get those answers in the character or the criteria response. So try to do your best and keep it in there. Other changes for the public contest, we have merged collaboration and creativity. This year, many of you have already heard that. The reason we did that is over the past few years, about 80% of the applications give us the same exact answer in both of those criteria. So we merged that. And then we created a new criteria, and it's called energy management. And that incorporates fuel, all kinds of fuels, and electric energy, and other types of energy that you're using in your fleets today. We will cover that in the new criteria here later on. The commercial contest criteria, the commercial contest has remained the same as 2024. We did not make any changes to the criteria. They are the same. However, we will cover them again today. We've got our judges, two of our judges with us today, Scott Rude and Steve Saltzgiver. They're online with us. They're going to help me go through this, and we're going to talk about these criteria. We're going to move into the public fleet criterion. We'll start with that. And I want to emphasize again, this is what the public fleet application guide looks like. It is in yellow. Make sure you get the right one when you're downloading that if you're a public fleet. I can't emphasize how imperative it is you read that and read the correct one. So that's important there. Let's go on to the first criteria, and we're going to talk about accountability. You see that blue circle in there, it means it's data relevant. The best way to answer this, in my opinion, is give us some numbers, give us your metrics. Tell us where you store them, how they're annually reviewed, if they're quarterly reviewed, who gets them, and be concise. Steve, what do you got to say on that?
Sorry, I got to turn off my mute. I think, the more measurements that we get, the better we're able to really evaluate the submittals. So if you include things like your productivity rates, your labor rates, your PM compliance, things like that, we really get an idea, and especially if that's in some kind of a graph type form or in a table or something, like if you attach something that shows a visual concept to that, I think that's always helpful. Being concise, certainly. We give you enough information or enough space to put in information, but the more concise you are, I mean, if you think about it, us as judges, we're going through hundreds of these applications, and we don't want to miss anything because we want to make sure that we really evaluate you the way you need to be evaluated. So the more concise, the better.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. Scott?
One thing I want to add is, a lot of applicants spend a lot of time telling us why they're doing something. I would rather see the data in there, show what your goal is, how you're meeting the goal, if it's up or down, and if it is down, what are you doing to fix it?
Yeah, that's a great point there. We talk about that a lot, and that point basically goes for all the criteria. All the judges, we've been in the business quite a while, and we're all active in the industry. We see hundreds of fleets every year. We really know what you should be doing. What you should be doing is listed on these slides. And we know why you should be doing it. So you really don't have to tell us the what or the why. Just tell us how well you're doing it. And the best way to do that is through your metrics. The 100 Best Fleets has 16 benchmark performance metrics that we get right out of the applications. Those are the ones you probably want to be sending us. So that's what I have, and they are right there. Those are what we get every year out of the application. So these are the things you should be telling us when you talk about accountability metrics. Let's move on to technology right now. What I can say here is technology changes very fast. So you really need to have a plan. A public fleet usually has to go through their IT department to schedule changes in IT or implementations, or even bring in new diagnostic tooling in those systems that are tied into their network. So, tell us about that plan and then what you're doing. Scott, Steve, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I want to talk about the about the technology plan a little bit. When doing these reviews at I&E, a lot of them say, well, we don't have a technology plan in fleet. But if your county, your city, or your organization IT department has an IT plan, then you have to fall under it. Then that, in fact, is your plan. So go ahead and list that as your plan, and then tell us how it's deployed as far as the IT department managing it.
I don't really have anything to add to that. I think that's a good point.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. You really need to have a technology plan because you have, especially in a public fleet, you have to budget the money and it goes in here, and you have to have the IT staff to load it and do it. So you really need to have that plan. Tell us
I,
about it.
I
Be
might I
concise.
might add that you need to add some more training potentially, Mike, because
Yeah,
as things get more technological and more complex, you're going to probably have to provide a lot more training for your technicians.
right. Yep. Yes, sir. I agree with you 100%. Let's move along to our combined one this year, collaboration and creativity. you know, a lot of the initiatives come from all different types of corners of the organization. And when people get together and they start thinking about things and they do that, and every agency, I don't care if you're commercial, public, who you are, you really need to have a way to to stir collaboration and creativity and come up with new initiatives that are going to make things better. And you have to have a way to have outreach and foster those types of things. So this is what we're looking for, and you need to tell us how to do that. And we like to see a good example as well. Did it increase service delivery or maybe not? Tell us how that stuff is working when you answer that creativity. And you should have some type of structured process on how you encourage that. These are the things we want to hear when you talk about that. You guys want to add anything to that?
Yeah, the I like to see how it increased your service delivery and what the outcome was. And if it wasn't successful, what did you go back and do to change? And how are you regrouping and moving forward? You know, because not every plant, not every idea is going to morph into something positive. So, I like to see how they're managing the outcomes in the service delivery.
Yeah, I think we like to see the step-by-step process. What initiated that collaborative event with the team, and then what was the eventual outcome?
Yeah, I agree. Those are the things that we need to do, and we like to see those. Um, and those are the things that people all out there should be doing, and tell us about that type of stuff when you answer that. Make sure you tell us about those processes you're using to foster that as well. We are having technical difficulty here. I am not advancing my slide. Let's see here. There we go. Sorry about that. Here's our new criteria for this year in the public fleets: energy management. So this is what we're kind of looking at. These are the things when you talk about managing your energy you're using. We need to know the types, and you should understand the types, the regulations with all those types, and then how that's fitting into your sustainability plans and your efficiency plans and those types of things. And these are the things you should be looking at, the comparative properties, procurement. How do you procure it? How do you manage it? There's all kinds of ways to doing that. The technologies you need to have, and then when you get into regulatory processes, we've got a few mentioned here, but there's others. These are the types of things we're really looking at. And in order to get your arms around that and really have a good energy management program, you got to have a plan. So tell us about that plan and how you're doing that. If you recently implemented it, or it's on the drawing board, or you haven't thought about it, but it's a good idea. Tell us about that. And Scott and Steve, you want to add to that?
Not really have anything. Mainly just want to see how your operation is operating, particularly your sustainability plan, how that impacts various operations, from on the road vehicles to shop performance, those things.
Yeah, this is new criteria, so I'm looking forward to seeing uh, how our applicants respond to this. So I want to look at your sustainability plans and any policies and procedures you have around energy management.
Yeah, yeah. We cover the sustainability plans and the actual sustainability criteria, but they do kind of override into fuel. You can't get away from that. Fuel and energy. So we want to hear about that and how you're actually managing these things, and that's the intent for this. So we are looking forward to that, and I think for the most part, most public fleets have a pretty good handle on how they're doing this. So it's going to be interesting, and I'm looking forward to reading the criteria there as well. Performance recognition and celebration. It's so important to recognize your people, and you have to celebrate your successes. You should have a formal program in place, and document that. But you also need to know, how you mitigate poor performance as well. And these are the things we like to read when we read this criteria. It should be organizational wide celebrations, and the other thing I'm really big on and I like to see is how do your superstars that you have working for you get recognized publicly? How do their family and friends know how good they are? There's got to be a process in place to do that. So tell us about those things. I'm going to move on to high trust culture here. No organization runs with one person at the helm making all the shots, calling all the plays. You wind up having a bottleneck and nothing gets done. You've got to place trust down at the lowest possible level. And you really need to have a plan or a policy or procedure or something that documents how that's done. You got to have an oversight process. Along with authority comes accountability. These are the things we want to hear about when you're answering this criteria. And it's so important to do that. And then, how is that working? Does it help you with your service delivery or, do all that? And then if you can give us an example on how you're actually empowering your people and doing that, that's great. You guys want to add into that?
Again, I like to see examples, you know. So
Yeah.
the more examples you can give us with the outcome, the better your chances are of getting top points in this category.
Yeah, absolutely. And in this category right here, an example is like a good metric when it comes to accountability. We'll get it out of the example. So make sure you give us a good example um, in when you talk about evidence of a high trust culture. Financial management, that was a new one we instilled last year, and it's so important. All fleet managers, directors, and even down into the ranks need to know how they're funded and what the funding strategy is and how these things are done. How are you funding capital replacement assets? What about your facilities? What about your tooling? Those things need to be planned. So you got to tell us about how you're doing that. What are those strategies? How do you manage all that and do that? And then give us some metrics, give us an example, those types of things. These are what you should be doing when you're talking about financial management. But it's so important, and we'll cover it here in a little bit. But you really need to know how you're funded and what the funding sources are. You also need to know how your clients and your customer bases are funded as well, because that affects how you're going to be funded in chargeback programs and those types of things. So that's very important when it comes to this criterion. Steve, you got anything on that?
He may.
Sorry about that. I had got kicked off for a minute there. Yeah, I think the more we can understand your operation, the better. You know, especially if you're doing if you have an internal service fund or you're doing some type of funding, like a chargeback system, things like that, so we understand where you're going and how you're operating your operation.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add there is in last year's applicants missed tooling and equipment planning strategy quite a bit. I didn't see a lot in there about tooling, so just want to put that out there that don't forget to put tooling into this criteria so we can read it.
Yeah, that's important. We like to see all that stuff. And these are examples. There's other things out there that you're having to fund. So, tell us about that. Could be IT, could be whatever you're trying to do. And then if you really need to, and I really recommend this a lot to folks, you may want to go talk to your financial management department or who's ever running the finances, and just have a little chat with them about your funding structure. And they'll give you a lot of hints that may help you answer that particular criterion. Doing it right the first time. It's a data relevant criteria with that little circle there. We are looking for numbers here. Your numbers are better than 1,000 words. Tell us what the number is, what your goal is, and is it up or down or whatever. This right here, it's so important. It's hard to get funding to even maintain your fleet the first time. How can you afford to do it twice? So you really have to have a good program in place in order to mitigate rework. You got to have failure analysis process. You got to get stakeholder feedback. What is your quality control process? How do you mitigate rework? And that's what we're looking for right here. Scott, you want to add to that?
Yeah, a lot of applicants miss the root cause. They don't tell us how their failure analysis process is, and most of them lack a quality control program.
Yeah. Yeah, it's important to have all that stuff to have a well-rounded program. So think about all that. These are all explained in the application guide, so don't forget to read that guide on these criteria. And just to show you what we had last year, these are the metrics for doing it right the first time. And the goal has been fairly consistent. It went up a little bit last year, but the actual is staying fairly consistent. It's a little bit over 1%. Which is very good to see. And these are the averages for 4 years. Those are really good numbers. So most people are doing a pretty good job at that. And just tell us how you're doing that and give us those numbers, and we'll keep up these metrics for you. And they'll be a great benchmark for you.
When you say 100 best, the best practice is obviously below 2%, so they're accomplishing that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, doing very well. Quick and efficient turnaround. Here's another data relevant criteria. You really need to know when an asset comes into the shop or it's outsourced into a contracted shop, how long it's going to be down. You got to have those averages so you know what you need to do. So we're really looking to see what those turnaround time metrics are. We want to see how you manage that. How do you measure that? You really should be using an information management system to do that. How often you review it? Do you automate your scheduling to mitigate some of the excessive time? And then tell us what your metrics are, your goals. How much is turned within 24 hours? How much is turned within 48 hours? That's in and out of the shop. And then again, when you're telling us these things, talk about, part supply and your demand satisfaction metrics. How many parts, and what's the percentage of parts your technicians get upon order or within 2 hours, or whatever you're measuring. Tell us what you're doing, how you're managing your part supply, and then we want to know about PM compliance metrics as well. You spend all that time doing scheduling and all that, and what is your compliance rate? Um, your customer base should be coming in on schedule, and you've got to do that. So these are the things you want to tell us about. You should be doing them, and we want to tell us about it in this criteria. Scott, you got anything to add?
Yeah, what I find a lot of applicants miss the PM compliance metrics on this, and they don't talk anything about their part supply, the demand satisfaction metrics at all.
Yeah.
Agree. Some of the best practices obviously are providing those metrics. Like 97% demand is a good best practice, 95% PM compliance. Also, scheduled versus unscheduled is another metric you could put there. Anything over 60, 70% scheduled versus non-scheduled is what we're looking for. Um, if you don't have that metric, you're usually running around shop with your hair on fire, not knowing what's going on. So that's kind of our litmus test for scheduled versus unscheduled. But that also comes out in the turnaround metrics that Mike mentioned.
Yeah, those are all great points. And you really need to be managing that workflow process, like you say. So these are the kind of things we're looking for here. Let's look at the metrics from 2024. They're fairly consistent. In 23, we didn't get the 48-hour numbers. We didn't get enough responses, but these numbers are fairly consistent across the 4-year data set that we have. So I think the 100 best fleets are doing a great job at getting these turnaround times and managing that. And they'll increase. I think supply chain may have given a little influence in 2023 and 4, but we'll see how it turns out in 2025. Competitive pricing, another data relevant criteria. We're really looking for numbers. We want to know what your labor rates are and how you're doing that. Tell us about your chargeback systems. Do you do peer competition with other agencies around the region and your commercial shops within your local area? Tell us about that stuff. What are your comparisons? How do you stack up against those other people around you? Tell us about your part and subcontracted work and your fuel markups. What are they? Tell us what those markups are. We'll take a look at that and see where you're at. We have metrics on those as well. And then we have an example on the sheet here. If your agency is 105 50 and your market's 121, you're 16% lower than local market. You're really justifying your business right there, and you're going to stay competitive. If it goes the other way, you really need to look and see where your money's going, because something is going wrong. Steve, you got something to add to that?
You're muted, Steve.
I guess I had nothing to say. I'm muted. Chargeback programs obviously are important. If you're not running a competitive shop, you're going to be subject at some point in time by a politician wanting to outsource you. The other thing too is people make decisions based on prices. We all do. We all follow the sales. During Christmas time, we're always looking for those sales. So people really shop with their feet. So make sure you put that information in there and make sure you're competitive.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
that's
agree
good.
with that.
Yeah, that's really good. And let's take a look at some of those labor rates we have. We really got pretty good data here to break down average rate, light, medium, heavy, some fire. In 2023, we didn't get enough of some categories, but in 2024, those numbers are fairly consistent. Now they're gonna vary from different regions. There's some regions that are higher than others. These are the averages across the entire country, including Canada, some from South America. So we've got these averages in here. I do want to emphasize, when you talk about rates, um, and you talk about a fully burdened rate, it shouldn't be down it shouldn't be down in the $40 and $50. We haven't seen a fully burdened labor rate in less than $100 in years. So those are going to be more of a hybrid rate. If you're using a administrative chargeback type system where you have a set fee for a labor rate or an asset, and then you have an administrative charge on top of that, just tell us that. Try not to use, if you're not doing a true fully burdened labor rate, I highly recommend you don't tell us it's a fully burdened labor rate, because if you're gonna use those two words, you better go talk to your finance people, and they'll give you the actual number of what your fully burdened rate is. So we get a lot of that, and we really have the judging team. We really have some good conversations every year about that on labor rates. So I just want to put that out there. If you're going to use fully burdened, better go talk to your finance folks and let them give you that number. And sometimes you'll be surprised on where it's at. So let's move right along here. Let's go into staff development. We touched on this a little bit earlier when we were talking about technology, how important it is to develop your staff. We say it's a data relevant criteria. We want to know your metrics. How many hours are you training your people on average? And it's not just technicians. It could be your administrative staff, your part staff, everybody, your management staff and supervisors. What are your averages out there? And then when you talk about staff development, in this day and age, people want to know, they want a development plan. They want to know what they need to do to move up to the next position, to get into the managerial role or supervisor role, or become the parts manager or the fiscal analyst, whatever. You got to have a development plan. In order to do that, you got to have individual goals and you got to have team goals. And how do you do that? What is your process? We want to know what that process is. How are you doing it? Do you have apprenticeship programs going? Do you have a peer review program going? These are the things that you should be doing on a regular basis, and just tell us how well you're doing them. What type of training do you have? And tell us about what your process is and what you're doing. You guys got anything to add on that?
Yeah, I would want to talk about the technician shortage, and I want to emphasize how important it is to have a apprenticeship program these days. You got to get into the community colleges and the high schools and talk to those automotive programs and see if you can bring them in as either an unpaid or a paid apprenticeship, and then in the future you may want to hire these individuals.
That's exactly right, Scott. That's what people need to. They need to at least have a plan to be successful.
Absolutely, absolutely. And a lot of fleet directors and managers and superintendents, they'll go out and they'll get on the advisory committee for VOTEX and even high schools, to help develop their training programs that they're doing, so that they're actually training the future technicians and the future fleet professionals on what they should be training them on. Sometimes those plans are sending them out just to dealerships and those types of things, and they're really kind of missing some of the basic fundamentals that really are needed. So these are some of the things we want to hear about when you respond to staff development. And don't forget about yourself. You've got to develop, the fleet managers and your supervisors and all that. They need certifications and those types of things. So tell us about that when you do that. Resources stewardship. That's a big one. It's a highly popular topic right now with all the technology advances, the EVs, the alternative fuels. And in order to keep your hands around it, you got to have a plan. We want to know about your plan. We want to know what type of efforts you have. Is it team efforts, individual efforts? What are you trying to be sustainable in? We've got some examples: human capital, environmental, resources. Regulatory compliance is huge in sustainability and resources stewardship. Do you have any certifications in and like the NAFA Green Fleet certification or a state Green Fleet certification or sustainability or federal something. Tell us what you're doing and tell us what you have and how well you're doing it. These are the things you should be doing and looking at them. Almost every state, and I know Canada has it as well, has some type of state sustainability program and certification process that a lot of fleets can go through, and they'll get certified that they're meeting compliance regulations and they're doing all these things. So you may want to look in. If you're not doing that, you may want to be looking into that and tell us what you're doing. Scott, you got something to add on that?
Yeah, in the applications, a lot of applicants forget the human capital side of it, and they kind of focus on the environmental. So we get a lot of good environmental responses, but the human and the capital is usually lacking in the applications.
Yeah. Yeah, and there could be others too. There's others. Tell us what you're doing. These are examples of some of the things you should be doing. There's other things we know you should be doing. We want to hear that too. Steve, you got anything you want to add?
No, I think Scott covered it. The more the better. Just let us know what you're doing there.
Yep. Yep, I agree. Now, for the public fleets, those are the 12 criteria. And like I said, all these slides, these are examples of things you should be doing in your organization and to be a 100 best fleets. And we want you to tell us how well you're doing them. If you're not doing them, it's probably something you should be looking at doing. But if you're not doing it, don't tell us you're doing it, because we do have tiebreakers, and we want to make sure if we have to ask for something, we're going to ask for it. So these are the things you should be doing. I want to move to the next slide and show you a little video of our 2024 number one public fleet. Oops.
My name's Kevin Schlungen. I'm the fleet manager for Dakota County in Minnesota, and we are the 2024 number one 100 best fleets public fleet. Just the recognition from your peers in your industry, it means a lot. It shows that you're doing the right thing, that you are following industry standards, and just for overall recognition and acknowledgement that what we're doing is right. When you go back to our own organization, our elected officials, they go a long way showing that when we make recommendations and what we're trying to do, that is what others are trying to do. So, and your support means a lot to us. So it's good for the team, and it's good for the county as a whole to know that we are spending money the way that is expected, and taxpayers should be proud to support us. The fact that this program, it's like having a consultant. The questions that they're asking for it, we've used it as a roadmap to try to build and improve our own program over time. It wasn't that it was necessarily about winning, it was about improving and about seeing what others are doing. And so the recognition, I won't say that that's not exciting or that we don't enjoy that, but that wasn't the ultimate goal. The goal was just to see if we could improve what we are doing, what should we be doing. And then when NAFA changed some of the stuff in the program, just the fact that you could actually get a review of your application by one of the judges, that was actually priceless.
And we are looking forward to see who will be in that video next year. So get your whole team together, public fleets, and make sure you go through that criteria and get it right and put your best foot forward. Let's move on now into the application guide review for the commercial fleets. Again, I said earlier, we did not change the criteria in here. It is the same. So you commercial fleets out there that have applied before, you understand the process. You're going to have a second, maybe even a third year to benchmark yourself, and you'll understand. The commercial fleets are beginning to understand and why this is an annual process, because it really you really see the differences from year to year that if you didn't do this process, you wouldn't really know you've changed that much. So we're going to go through this similar to what we did in the public fleets. We have 10 criteria here. We're going to talk about them right now. I do want to show everybody what the commercial application guide looks like. It is in green. Make sure you commercial fleets read the right one. Not that you can't read the other one, but make sure you concentrate on your own application guide, because everything we're going to talk about here is written into that guide to help you and assist you in submitting your application. So let's move into the criteria right now. The number one is accountability. This is identical to the public fleets. Doesn't matter if you're a public fleet or a commercial fleet, you have accountability, you have metrics. Now they may not be published other than internally in your own company, but you still have those metrics. And I do want to reemphasize again, I know a lot of commercial fleets, they don't like to publish numbers and too many specifics because, it may hurt them in the competitive marketplace. We do not share any specific information from any agency. Everything we would put out is on an average basis, so you don't need to worry about that. And these are the things you should have similar to the public fleets. You've got a list of benchmarks that you're trying to hit, and you've got a strategic plan. You're working on those, and so you're doing those measurements, and you're looking at specific functions. These are the things we want to see when you respond to this. How do you document these things? And tell us about that. Steve, you want to add to that?
I don't really have anything major to add. I think the more you can demonstrate to us that you run an accountable operation, and you're communicating all that with your stakeholders, so that they understand that you're an accountable operation. That's really what we're looking for.
Exactly. Scott?
Yeah, no, I agree with Steve. And, examples will really tell the story, and that gives us a lot of information to grade you fairly.
Yeah. Metrics are worth 1,000 words. Yep, exactly. Okay, let's go to number two, asset management. In the commercial world, you really have to keep your finger on the pulse of managing those assets. You've got to have proactive strategies. Sometimes you're buying 800-900 assets a year, sometimes more than that. So you really need to know what you're doing and how you're going to implement that and what you're doing. So you've got a plan, you've got strategies you're doing. We want to know about that. A lot of commercial fleets partner with other agencies and other companies in order to help them do that. So we want to hear about that. If you're using selector lists and those types of things, tell us about that. What about life cycle management? How do you do that? Tell us about how you're managing those life cycles, your remarketing process and those types of things. And then give us an example if you can. Scott, you got anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's important that they really talk about the life cycle management, especially, the utilization and the remarketing. I don't recall seeing a lot of that in the applications, and I really would like to see more of that in the future.
And I'm a huge advocate of stakeholder involvement. Make sure you've got them involved when you're doing specifications for vehicles. Make sure you're specing your vehicles by the vocation, and include some of your vendors and your suppliers in those operations. As an example, I used to hold an annual specification meeting, and we would go through and we would come out with a specification for each type of asset. If you're doing similar things like that, just let us know.
Yeah. Exactly. That's so important to get that right the first time, because you can you can create havoc in a company really quick if you're not doing all those things. So that's kind of what we're looking for. There's other things you could be telling us about. But we're trying to give you the examples of what you should be doing here. So let's move right on to business management. In the commercial world, there's a lot of regulation and there's legislation that you've got to be managing, and you've got legal implication. Yeah, I can't even talk. Overtones and things that you've got to you got to look at, and you've got to have policy in place to do that, and you've got to have your partners following along the same rules. So when it comes to running your business, tell us how you're doing that. How do you keep your finger on the pulse of all those different things, uh, and that? And then when you talk to partnering, if you can give us an example of how well you're doing that, and it could be with suppliers, it could be with your customer base, could be with anybody. Tell us what you're doing. You guys want to add on to more of that?
Yeah, I agree with you, Mike, there. Talk about your strategic partners. I don't think we've seen a lot of that. And, you know, talk about your policies and procedures, which ones you have in place and which ones you're updating and any new ones that you might be adding to your organization.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think if you're working with NAPA and you're on the on a committee or something, or you're regularly working with your legal department, let us know. Let us know that you're involved in this type of activity.
Yeah, good point. Real good point there, Steve. Yeah, tell us about those types of things, because you really, if you're doing those types of things, you're really up to date on what's happening, and you're getting the latest and greatest information. So tell us about that as well. Moving into the next one is financial management. Similar to the public fleets, a little different. Commercial fleets are structured a little bit differently. So, tell us about how you're structured and what your financing options are, and how do you do that, and if you have a cost recovery process, or are you just a generally allocated, or how are you doing all that? And then here again, you're going to have some benchmarking metrics that you can tell us about, and how you're doing that. And then when it comes to that budgeting process, like I said earlier, sometimes you're buying seven, eight, 900, 1,000 assets a year, could be even more than that. Uh, you've got to have a plan, and you got to have a long-term plan on how that's going to work, and you're looking way out into what you need to meet the needs of your company in the future. Two of the major initiatives that we pulled out of the 2024 applications, one of them was one of the most important initiatives was making sure they met the needs of the organization. And what I mean by that is they were making sure that they had enough assets out there where they were not missing any work, or they didn't have excessive downtime and those types of things. So these are the things you want to talk about and tell us when you respond to this criterion. Steve, you got anything you want to add to that?
No, I think the main thing there really is, how are you funded? Are you an internal service fund, enterprise fund? Are you a general fund recipient? It's just nice to know that. I mean, obviously, a best practice if you're a city fleet would be to be in some type of a internal service fund so you can keep your costs in one area to focus on.
Yeah. Okay, so that's what we got on financial management. Make sure you tell us about those types of things, and it's really important to tell us how you're structured and how you're managing that. Use of technology and information. It's similar to the public fleets. You should be doing the same things. Technology implementation is huge, and changes are coming so fast. How do you manage that? There's a lot of technology commercial fleets have deployed for in telematics and those types of things, for routing efficiency and risk safety management and risk mitigation and those types of things. And then if you're doing your own maintenance in-house, you follow along with most of the public fleets, where you've got diagnostic tooling systems and these types of things. And what are you doing in those areas as well? So you really should have a technology plan in place that's looking out a year, at least a year or two, on what's coming, because it does take a while for implementation to do that. Scott, you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I agree with the having a technology plan. Also, tell us about how often you're updating like your information system, your diagnostic tools, and any other like your telematics, because they all have updates that you need to purchase at some point. So tell us how often you're updating your technology.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
I think a new one with the artificial intelligence. How are you using that? That's really becoming an emerging trend. A lot of fleets. So if you're using that and taking advantage of that, we'd really like to know how that's benefiting you as an operation.
Yeah, absolutely. AI, a big thing now, and just about every facet of life, it seems. So, and that's changing so rapidly. You never, once you get used to what you have, it's already changed. So we'll watch that technology as well. But tell us about all that stuff you're doing out there to use technology to increase efficiency. Maintenance management. Uh, this is a lot different than in the public fleets because a lot of the commercial fleets contract out their entire maintenance, either through an FMC or they have contracted management or contracted maintenance suppliers throughout their region, wherever they're operating, or nationwide. Some of them do. There's others out there. That are mixed. They do certain maintenance in-house and they contract out other maintenance for different types of assets and those types of things. So tell us how you're doing your maintenance management and what you're doing, if you're doing it in-house or outsourcing at all, or percentages of that, and tell us about your processes, procedures. If you are doing it in-house, tell us about your inventory management program. Here again, similar to the public fleets, what's your levels, your demand satisfaction percentages, turn ratios, and those types of things. Uh, how do you how do you monitor the performance of your subcontractors? Do you even have a program to do that? That's important because you could have one vendor that's doing a turn time of 80% within 48 hours, and another vendor that's turning only 60% within 48 hours. So you want to go to this other guy. But how do you manage that? Do you even manage that? Tell us about that, especially when it comes to outsourcing and those types of things. And if you're outsourcing specific, specialty work, tell us about that as well. You guys want to add to that?
I don't really have anything to add at this
No,
point.
Yep.
Pretty self-explanatory.
Yep. Sounds good. Professional development. Similar to the public fleets, but professional development here, where a lot of commercial fleets, if they outsource or they're using an FMC and leasing their fleets, it's development at the managerial level and the supervisory level. So, you still have to have a development plan. You should be telling us about certifications and how you're doing that. If you are a CAFM or you're enrolled in NAFA's CAFM program or another similar program like that, tell us about it. Tell us about your leadership initiatives and what you're doing and how you're developing these strategies and overcoming the barriers and things that you're doing, and if you are training, tell us the average hours you're getting for your people, and about decision making processes and those things. How do you increase that? So tell us about those kinds of things, specifically, in your leadership development plans. That's a big one in this category here.
Covered it, Mike.
Yeah, yeah. Moving on to risk management. Risk management is becoming one of the largest items that a fleet manager needs to manage. You hear it a lot, especially in commercial fleets, specifically in trucking fleets, about these nuclear verdicts out there. Um, and companies need to really pay attention to risk management. And you've got to tell us about, we want to know about insurance coverages and how do you do that? How are you subrogating that type of stuff? But more importantly, how do you avoid that type of stuff? You've got to have, training and risk avoidance and doing all that. And, who do you train and how much do you train? And this all is centralized around your risk management program, and then give us an example, you know, prevention plans and review processes. How do you do that? How do you mitigate that future avoidance or that continuance of that process? I know I talk to commercial fleets a lot, and they dive into this because they've had one of those unfortunate incidents where somebody really gets hurt or worse, and all of a sudden it becomes a crisis. Some companies have said their insurance has canceled them and won't renew them. So they really, because they didn't have a good risk management plan. So how do you do that? Tell us about how you're doing that. And I know Scott and Steve, you guys probably got more to add into that. You want to chime in here?
Now, the thing I want to mention is, if you're using telematics such as cameras or collision avoidance, this is really good stuff to uh, relieve your drivers of liability if they are in an accident. Steve, I know you got a lot to say about that.
Well, and the other thing too to keep in mind is if you have that data too, makes you more accountable. But it can exonerate drivers certainly, and lower some of those nuclear decisions that are being made out there. The more you can do, the better when it comes to risk management. There's a lot of things. I'll actually be teaching a class tomorrow on risk management, so there's just a lot more you can do there to keep people apprised of that, keep your stakeholders involved, and make sure that you're doing everything you can. You have a good PM program. If you run DOT related vehicles, are you always in compliance? Those kinds of things.
Absolutely. Yeah, good point there. Your PM program and that scheduled work and those types of things we were talking about earlier, they all fall into risk management as well. Your equipment and your vehicles have to be maintained. So that's all part of that process. Tell us about those processes when you respond to that criterion. Fuel management. You have to understand how you're managing your fuel. In the commercial world, not a lot of commercial fleets have their own fuel sites and their own fueling systems in place. They purchase it out. They go through fuel cards or other types of methods of securing fuel. So tell us how you do that. What are you doing to run your fuel and manage your fuel? And if you do have your fuel systems on your sites, how do you manage the regulations? And there's different regs for USDs and ASTs, and how do you do all that? And how does that all fit into your sustainability program? Fuel, again, similar to the public fleet, it fits into your sustainability. You've got to mitigate its use. You've got to have idle reduction strategies and those types of things to limit that use. So how are you doing that? You should have a policy, idle policies and procedures and those types of things. I know yesterday in New England we had two of the featured fleets speaking. We're talking about idle reduction technologies that they're implementing in their vehicles and equipment. So those are some of the things that are happening out there. And if you're doing those things, congratulations, and you're doing well. And tell us about that stuff. Scott and Steve, you want to add anything to this?
No, just the fact that in the future we're probably changing this to energy. We're keeping it the same for as fuel this year, but it probably will be changing in the future.
And the other thing, just if you have fuel cards, if you have on-site, just how are you managing fuel? Do you have an order desk? Are you buying fuel from the rack? What exactly are you doing? Do you have a wet hosing operation? Whatever that is, let us know. And then why you did that. Did you go from your own fuel site to to lower mitigation issues, or and did you go to wet hosing to take that responsibility to a vendor? Just let us know those kinds of things while you're doing what you're doing.
Absolutely, absolutely. And here again, similar, we talked about this earlier. You don't have to be very wordy. You can be really concise when you tell us about that stuff. We get it. So if, like for example, if you are wet hosing, just tell us why and how that's making you more efficient, and we're good to go with that. That doesn't have to be very long. So give us all that information, and these are the things you should be doing out there in the real world. Moving on to sustainability and stewardship, those are large, uh, especially if you are a publicly traded company. You've got GHG rules and regulations that you have to you have to comply with. There's a lot of regional compliance that you've got to do, and you've got to have a plan for that. And so we want to hear about that. And this is very similar to the public fleets. What are your plans for sustainability? And it's not just talking about environmental. Scott brought that up earlier in the public fleets. You've got human sustainability and capital. How do you sustainable with your funding and your compliance things in nature that we want to hear about? What are your plans, your goals? Uh, what are your measurable achievements? Those are things that really are really important to know, and we want to hear about all that. So tell us about that. You guys got anything you want to add to that?
No, I think we've pretty much covered that one throughout the presentation.
Yeah,
Yep, sure did.
yeah, I agree. That's a big one there, and we've touched on it several times, and that's how important it is to the industry, with as much as we're talking on it here. So those are the 10 criteria for the commercial fleets. And again, these are examples of what you should be doing out there in your fleet. They're all described in the application guide. Again, I cannot emphasize how important it is to read that guide when you're getting ready to submit this application. So moving on, I would like to show just a little video of our number one commercial fleet from 2024.
My name is Kevin Grasham. I'm the fleet manager for Essential Utilities and winner of the Commercial Fleet of the Year. Our team is very excited about it. It means a lot to us. I mean, we're longtime members, and this is a goal that we've tried to do for a long time now, and it's well worth it. It's a lot of pride for myself as well as our team. I mean, we constantly work together, review our policies, and NAFA kind of sets the standards. We try to pull in everybody and try to get buy-in from upper management as well as all of our drivers and employees.
And again, we are excited for the commercial fleet this year. We're expecting continued growth in that contest. So good luck to all the commercial fleets out there in your competition this year. Okay, both contests, the public and the commercial fleets, have an essay included with them. And like we said earlier, we're trying to limit the finishing up the criteria responses in the essay, because this is where you really want to tell us about your initiatives. And almost every organization is working on at least 4 to 5, 6 fronts on new initiatives, trying to get efficient in certain areas, some more specific than others. And this is where you really want to tell us how well you're doing that. The essay format is 4,000 characters. That's approximately 620 words. We recommend you use them all and really tell us about these initiatives. When you write this essay, we like it to be very well written, very clearly understandable. A bulleted list or very clear paragraph separation is highly preferred. Reason we say that is we want to make sure we don't miss anything. Now, it's difficult for the 4 judges all 4 of us to miss something, but it's possible if it's not clear. So a bulleted list is great. A clear paragraph separation, titled, is great. We like to see that. If you are going to finish up some criterion in the essay, please follow the order of the criterion so we can find it. We don't want to miss that in there. And don't over embellish on any one topic. We'll get it. We all know what you should be doing, and we know why you should be doing it. Tell us how well you're doing it. Those are the keys there. Moving on to the actual content, um, we want you to tell us about your top initiatives. Um, and these initiatives, they should be current. If you're going to tell us stuff that you were doing before COVID, that life's changed since COVID. It may have started then and it probably got paused and you picked it up. Well, start telling us about it when you picked it up, and here we go. They really need to be current. They should be within the last couple of years, no more than 3 years back. And then we want to know what the impact's going to be. How is this going to benefit your organization? Is it going to be, substantial gain? What is the actual impact if it's completed? And again, the relevance. How long is this initiative going to generate, operational efficiency for your fleet? So these are the things we want you to tell us about when you're telling us about those initiatives. Stephen Scott, you want to add into that?
No, I think that telling us just shows that you have a plan, you have a clear goal, which you should have as a 100 best fleet operation.
Yeah, I agree with that. Give us as much initiatives that you're working on. Give us, the goal, the intent, and the process. And if you already have an outcome, tell us what that outcome was. Or if you're trying to do a long-term goal, tell us what that goal is at the end of the term.
Yep, exactly. Exactly. That's what we're looking for, and that's how you should be answering that criteria. So when we get on to the contests themselves for the public and the commercial fleets, um, again, you've heard us say this: metrics say 1,000 words, past and current. We'll know what you're doing based on that. Um, they should show improvement and stability. You can't keep going up. You're eventually going to get to 100%. But if you're doing pretty consistent for the past 3 or 4 years, that means you've got your finger on the pulse and you're really managing that fleet pretty well. For winning essays, give us a real brief introduction and a conclusion or a summary. Again, use headers to separate the categories. If you're going to use the categories, a bulleted response is probably the best way to go, or good paragraph separation. That's all good. I like to add one thing now that we're in this highly technological AI era. We saw many applications last year where different AI bots were used to help wordsmith the narratives. I'm going to highly recommend if you're going to use an AI bot, you copy that narrative that it writes for you into Word and you wordsmith it. If you take it right out of the AI bot and load it up into the application online, most AI bots put out their responses in cells. We will only see the first cell, which is about 50 words. And we had several of them last year where that's all we got. And there was not much we could do about it. It was all too late. The other thing on that point right there is most fleet people and professionals don't talk like the wording that comes out of an AI bot unless you really have it programmed well. So we recommend you go in there and wordsmith it and make sure you're telling us what's going on, in the fleet fashion. Those sometimes the AI systems will put in a lot of colorful metaphors and things of that nature, and fleet professionals just don't talk like that. And it adds a lot of unnecessary wording to it as well. We want the real meat and potatoes that you're doing there. So if you're going to use an AI bot, be very careful on what you're doing there. Let's move into the next two awards here, Fleet Technician of the Year Award and the Fleet Professional of the Year Award. These are nomination processes. I know in the past 2 years, these are 2 years old, the fleet technicians, over 50% of the nominated technicians were peer nominated. There's no reason why the Fleet Professional of the Year couldn't be done the same way. So let's take a look at a little video of our 2024 Fleet Professional of the Year, Curtis Mullins.
So my name's Kurt Mullins. I'm with the City of Round Rock. I'm a lead fleet technician for the fire fleet. I've been there for about going on 12 years now, and I'm a Fleet Technician of the Year. Our team is like a family, and we all work together, and we all want each other to succeed. It's just a great city to work for, and how they promote us and encourage us to do better. So it feels great to be recognized for the hard work we do. I think my team's going to be pretty excited about this. Something to look forward to in their careers, give them a goal to work towards.
And we're excited about that too as well. We've put together a little checklist for the Fleet Technician of the Year. These are things that you want to keep your eye on as you get through your nomination process. Start early, be very detailed. One of the most important things right here is expound on the technician's accomplishments in the essay. These nominations are drop-down type, where you're going to click on a box, you're going to find who your nominee is, where he falls. You're going to click on that box and move to the next one. Those are auto-scored, and then we will see the rest of it in the essay. So make sure you give us a good essay and really tell us how much of a superstar he is in that essay. And then attach a headshot and your agency logo, so we know that. It's very important to do that, because soon after the application period closes, we will be starting articles and things on the nominees. So make sure we get that stuff right up front. Let's move on to the Fleet Professional of the Year, and we've got a little video of our Fleet Professional of the Year for last year.
It was very exciting to be able to accept this award. I've been working my entire career to be able to bring the best that I can to the industry for my team and for my company. Being able to receive this award just shows that we've been working hard. This award reflects on the entire team that I work with daily, from the drivers to the technicians to the support staff that's within my space to help keep this going for Carvana.
And again, we're excited about that award as well. And again, we have a similar, it's kind of a checklist for your Fleet Professional of the Year. It's very similar. It's almost identical to the Technician of the Year. And then again, expound on the accomplishments in the essay, because it is a drop-down nomination. And just to clarify, the Fleet Professional of the Year, it's anyone involved in fleet other than a technician. It could be the fleet director or manager. It could be the shop supervisor or foreman. It could be the parts manager, the fiscal analyst, the administrative specialist. Anybody other than a technician can be nominated for this award. So really take a look at who those superstars are that are really making an impact in your fleet, and submit their nomination. They deserve it. Scott, you got anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, overall with the applications, I strongly recommend that you have as many people as you can in your organization to review it and make edits to it. Because you're going to miss stuff in there. You're going to have stuff that's misspelled or not quite accurate. And so the more people, or the more eyes you can get on the application, the better, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I know when I was submitting for this, back when I was running my fleet, every member of my team got a copy, including my boss. I wanted him to know what I was submitting as well, because it's not so much you're submitting something you're not doing, but you may not be getting all the good stuff. So you want all that stuff being done on the floor that you may not totally know about, to be put in your application, to be able to put your best foot forward. So that's kind of what we have on those two awards here. I do want to say once again, early bird rates are available for I&E. We will be having 3 days worth of 100 Best Fleets announcements and items going on and presentations. So we highly recommend you are there for that. The schedule, as it looks like, the open application period is now open right now. It will end on January 31st, 2025. We do not expect an extension, so don't wait till the last week. The announcements again are at I&E, April 28th to 30th. We will announce all the winners. We have initiative presentations. You can come to the NAFA Resource Center and get an application review. We will have your scoring rubric there, and we'll just pull it up and we'll tell you what we saw in your application. More importantly, we'll tell you maybe what we didn't see. And those are the things maybe you want to start concentrating on for the next year. We do have one more item I would like to bring up. We do not have a slide for it. New in the 2025 contest period, we now will be having a Tom Johnson Award. That is announced today. It should be going out anytime now. So we are going to recognize the founder of this program with his own award for an industry professional who throughout his career has really dedicated his life and soul and really been a benefit to the industry. So that's what it's about. You'll be able to read more about it soon coming out. And we will be announcing that at I&E as well. I do want to thank everyone for being here today. Don't forget, download and read your application guides. The open application period has commenced. The applications are available online. You can go right on to nafa.org contests and download your application and begin today. So we look forward to seeing everybody at I&E, and I want to thank everyone for being here today.
Yeah, thank you very much to our presenters for the day, and thank you so much to our attendees. The application is now open if you head to the nafa.org website. A recording of this webinar will be available to you soon after the webinar is concluded, and that concludes our webinar for the day. So thank you very much and have a great day.